everyone. Welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys, a former D1 Hooper, current high school coach, teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari for the second, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we are always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. And before we get going, Omari, I do have to apologize to our listeners that I didn't let them know that we were going to drop on Wednesday this week. This was my bad. I overlooked it on the last week's episode, but we did just have some scheduling stuff with the holidays. We were pretty proud of ourselves. We've got it drop every week, Omari, but we did have to drop on Wednesday this just because of some scheduling stuff.
Yeah, just some turbulence with the holidays, but we are back and ready at the top of 2023. And this should be a fun episode. I think the team is in a unique spot right now, but obviously a lot to discuss. And I think if the organization has it its way and the fan base has it its way as well, by the end of this year, the team will be in a different spot. So our episode is going to touch on all of that.
Yeah, so we're going to do a New Year's resolution episode. We're going to go through the players. Hopefully we have time to do some with the organization, GM, Troy Weaver, head coach, Dwayne Casey. May even do some Piston Pulse New Year's resolutions, maybe even individual. We'll see what we have time for. Before we get going tomorrow, we did get a new rating and review, and we just want to emphasize we appreciate these from you guys so much. If you enjoy the pod, please leave us a rating and a review. That truly helps us grow and expand our audience. But this one didn't have a name. It just said Top Notch Pod. This is probably the most level-headed Pistons podcast out there. Keep it up, guys. So not quite as in-depth as some of the ones we get, Omari, but still very much appreciated.
We always like when people leave us reviews. They're always pretty motivational. Well, I won't say always. I would say 99% of the time they're pretty motivational. So let's bump that closer to 100. Give us your feedback. We'd love to see it.
So let's get right into this. And we're going to start with kind of more of the backcourt players. We're going to talk about someone we haven't talked a lot about. I mean, I don't want to say rightfully so, but he hasn't been playing. So we're going to start with Cade Cunningham, Omari. And what is your New Year's resolution? And this can be like resolution or just something you want to see improved. And we're looking over the next 12 months, like Omari said. Hopefully this team looks vastly different on January 4th in 2024. So let's start with Cade Cunningham and your New Year's resolution for him.
My resolution for him is pretty straightforward. I think it's just for him to get fully 100% healthy and to be able to play his third season with very little turbulence, because it just seems like he's had injury issues. Not anything really substantially bad, obviously, but the stress fracture is a season-ending one, but not something that should affect him long-term. But even his rookie season, he had the ankle injury that kind of led to him starting off really slow during those first few weeks or month or so. And he had a hip pointer last season. And, obviously this is something everybody was dealing with, but COVID. But he's just had all these things that have kind of interrupted his progress. And I want to see him get 100% healthy. Let's see him play 72, 75, 78, maybe even 82 games next season. Let's get a full season of data. And let's see just how much he's able to improve and grow without the setbacks he's been dealing with so far.
Yeah, we've always talked about Killian Hayes, who we'll talk about in just a second, and the number of games played, right, before we really judge a player. And give him Cade through 2 seasons is only going to have played 76 games, Omari. So the first 2 seasons of his NBA career, it's just going to be 76 games, just 12 this season. But like you spoke to, even in his rookie season, he only played 64. So, health obviously is going to be a big thing for him. I am with you on that for a New Year's resolution. One other thing I would really like to see is Cade back on the bench. And I know right now he's taking care of himself, but I think that leadership that he brings to this team is huge. And I just would love to see him over the next few weeks, hopefully get back with the team. I know right now they're on a West Coast trip, so it probably doesn't make sense, but that would be something I would really like to see here the next few months. And then if we're looking big picture with his game, I mean, the jump shot. Like, I mean, at some point he's going to be able to get back in the gym and work on his game. And I want to see him come back and really shoot the ball well to start next season.
Yeah, I think there's probably a list of things we could list for Cade as far as his New Year's resolutions. And if it weren't for the injury woes, I think that the shooting would probably be the next one. Absolutely. He has all the tools he needs to be at least a good shooter. He's good at the line. His mechanics are good. And, I've talked about how I don't like comparing him to Luka, but, he kind of has that Luka ability to, maybe his overall percentage isn't great, but he has a tendency to hit them when he needs them most. So just building on that and making it a focal point and fully featured part of his game. Just because we did not see him really hit the percentage that he needed to hit last season, or really even this season. He actually regressed a little bit this season before the injury. So you want to see that trend up and not down.
Before we move to Jaden Ivey, I do want to ask real quick, since the surgery, have you seen Cade Cunningham, just like when you've been around at practices, shoot-arounds, anything like that? Have you seen him around the team or any indication of him being around the team?
We haven't seen him. He was around the team a lot before the surgery, but obviously there's a process after you have the surgery as far as being bedridden and then just slowly progressing up to where you're back at full strength. So my guess is that we'll see him again before the end of the season, but just over the past few weeks, we haven't.
Yeah. And again, I would love to see that here, just to see Cade and his kind of personality. And he just has this gravity about him that people, relate to. And I do think, it wouldn't make a huge impact. I do think his leadership, even on the bench, would help this team. Let's move to the rookie, Jaden Ivey, who's kind of been thrust into a crazy role, Omari, because of the injury to Cade Cunningham. And we'll talk about the Killian Hayes. We're not going to dive into the suspension, but we're going to talk about Killian Hayes. I'm sure it'll get brought up. But what would be your New Year's resolution for Jaden Ivey?
I want to see him clean the turnovers up. And I think we knew going into his rookie season that the playmaking was going to be inconsistent. We saw that at Purdue last season. He's able to make good passes. He's able to read the floor. But just that possession-to-possession consistency, or really just even the game-to-game, week-to-week even, consistency hasn't been there. Hasn't even played half of the season yet. It's something that can get better. But some of the turnovers he throws are just sort of baffling. And he isn't really the overall playmaker yet to kind of make up for that. I kind of went back and forth with somebody after last night's game, which we're not going to talk about much because it was another 30-point blowout. And they said that Cade struggled with turnovers too, and we know he'll be fine. Therefore, Jaden Ivey will be fine. And I said, well, you can't look at turnovers in a vacuum. You have to look at the overall playmaking package. And there's just some stuff Ivy just has to get down. And Dwayne made a good point last night, I thought, as well. I asked him about it, and he said that Jaden's a rookie. They're deaf. That point guard is depleted right now, and he's being asked to do a lot more than you probably want from him as a playmaker. So I think that's sort of being highlighted more than it normally would be right now. And we saw what he could do playing next to Cade Cunningham as well. He looked a lot more comfortable and natural. And maybe long term, he is a two guard who can make those passes rather than somebody you want doing that full time, which, again, is fine. You have Killian Hayes, you have Cade. That's fine. But at the end of the day, he's a player with the ball in his hands, and you got to be able to rely on him to make the right decisions with it. Even if he's not Chris Paul with it, you have to rely on him to maximize possessions one way or another. Okay, that's a great point, because you're right that he has to be able to make reads and do things the right way. But I'm also glad that you brought up that, it's okay if he doesn't play as the primary. To me, he's just in a role he wasn't built for, and he's not going to be successful in as a rookie. Cade's leadership, like we just talked about, was built for him to come in as a rookie and handle these things. To me, it even goes beyond the turnovers, Omari. Like, you can just tell the offense doesn't flow as well whenever Jaden Ivey is the only initiator on the floor. Even with Killian Hayes, who obviously has played better, but still isn't just like this otherworldly point guard, the offense flows better whenever Killian Hayes is on the floor. So to me, I would like to see Jaden Ivey's New Year's resolution be just improve his process. And it's somewhat the turnovers, but we talked about this as well. Sometimes it's when he settles for a three or a mid-range pull-up. To me, the process for Jaden Ivey is pretty simple. Attack the rim first. If he can get all the way to the rim, he should do it. If he gets cut off, make an easy read to a kick out to a teammate. If that's not there either, take the mid-range, and then shooting the three should be third. I feel like, just watching as an outsider, sometimes he's predetermining his decisions, Omari. Like, he'll have a game where he didn't score the ball well, so he'll come back the next game and he's overly trying to score the basketball. Or he'll have a game where he scored a bunch and maybe there was a little bit of talk about his passing, so he'll come back the next game and he's always looking to pass. Like, I just don't think he can predetermine these things, and I just like to see his process be a little bit better. With that said, I do want to say, like,
I want to emphasize his role right now isn't really even fair to him. And I brought this up because I assume today people are talking about, oh, we should have drafted Shaedon Sharpe instead of Jaden Ivey. Shaedon Sharpe is in a far different situation than Jaden Ivey, and one that's more conducive to him be successful, coming off the bench, not being a primary option, and those things. So Jaden Ivey's been thrust into a pretty big role here in his rookie year.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. If you swapped Shaedon Sharpe and Jaden Ivey, and Ivey were on a Portland team where you have Simons, you have Lillard, you have several guys who are really good with the ball in their hands. You have Jeremy Grant. You have 3 players averaging 20 plus a game who are taking pressure off of you, not only just as a scorer, but as a playmaker as well. Ivey would be able to come in and just attack gaps and just do all sorts of stuff, right? Like, I think we would see him play with a freedom that he can't play with on this Pistons team because they need him to be a full-time point guard. And that's not his game, and that's never been his game. And, I don't want to criticize him for not doing things that we already knew was going to be a struggle coming in. But the bottom line for him is that he needs the ball in his hands one way or another. Like, his game is predicated on him getting to the rim, and he's going to have to make those decisions one way or another. He may not be the primary guy, but even as a secondary playmaker, I think we could see him do a lot more than what he's done so far.
I agree, and I've made the same argument with Benedict Mathurin, and you know that I was as high on Benedict Mathurin as anybody. I think we both liked Benedict Mathurin. Benedict Mathurin also gets to come off the bench. He's on a team that's better all around. It has their quote-unquote star and Tyrese Halliburton, its primary creator. Like, it's just a completely different role. Like, this team as a whole, not to get into this too much, Omari, but almost everybody's playing a role above what they should be because Cade isn't there. Even Bogey is getting more usage than what he probably should be. The only person I truly think is probably in the role they should be, Jalen Duren probably isn't being asked to do too much, and Alec Burks because they continue to bring him off the bench. Outside of that, everybody's being asked to do too much, at least offensively. And so you're going to have some growing pains. Here's the thing, though. I don't think it's bad long term. Like, it's good to see this 3-game stretch from Jaden Ivey and how he's handled this. And maybe he can learn from it and grow. And now you have some film. Now Killian will come back on Wednesday moving forward, and he can play a little bit more off ball. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think we've been able to get some takeaways from it.
I think from a data standpoint, we're seeing what Jaden Ivey can and can't do.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, from what we talk about, you have a lot of young guards in the room, and they're going to have to figure out how to play with each other. If we know for a fact that you need to pair Ivey with a point guard, I think that solves some problems down the stretch. If he's Russell Westbrook and he's going to dominate the ball to the extent that Westbrook does long term, I think that creates problems. If he's not a Westbrook, if he's more of a trying to think of a...
Hopefully Donovan Mitchell after what Donovan Mitchell did last night.
Right, more of a Donovan Mitchell, right? He's not necessarily a point guard, but you could put him next to a Darius Garland, and then he could just go to work, right? Like, he could just attack, and we have Wes chiming in with DeMar DeRozan, which I like that one as well. You put him next to a point guard, you're in pretty good shape. So that's fine. Like, long term, it's fine that Jaden Ivey's not a point guard. It's probably better for the Pistons. It's just right now we're seeing that if you do need to play him at point guard, you're going to have some problems. So long term, probably not an issue. Short term, 100% an issue, at least until Killian Hayes gets back against the Warriors on Wednesday.
Absolutely. And speaking of Killian Hayes, he's the next on our list. Obviously a guy who, I don't want to say resurrected his career. Like, that seems overly dramatic, but obviously came into the season with some questions. Didn't have a first 90, 100 games of his career that was very good. And then he's played pretty well over the last 4 to 6 weeks. What would be your 2023 goals or resolutions for the young Killian Hayes?
For him to continue playing with confidence, I think, is the number one thing for him. And I will also say that the consistency for him is better. But if you look at his last 12 or 13 games, he's back in that slump again. And I say slump, but really he has to prove long term that he can be an efficient player. So that's closer to the norm for him. Bottom line for him, if he keeps playing with confidence, I think he will be fine. He will probably never be a guy that's going to consistently score 15, 16 a game on good efficiency. But you look around the league at different backup point guards, and there's still absolutely a role for a player who is as good a passer as Killian, a defender as Killian, and can still occasionally pop off and give you a lot of points as well. I think we've still seen overall that he's improved offensively, even if he's still kind of ebbing and flowing over the course of the season. So for him, just don't lose confidence. Keep up the way you've been playing. Keep leading the team emotionally. Just keep showing the growth you've been showing, because he's on the right track, even if, again, you look at the efficiency and it's still sort of wavering in a way where you want to see it. Just continue to be on an upward trajectory.
We're on the same page. I literally wrote, do not let anything change the headspace that he is in. Like, that is my only New Year's resolution for Killian Hayes. It seems like he's in a good headspace. It seems like he's confident, borderline arrogant. He's talking trash. He's talking to the crowd. He's talking to the other team's bench when he hits it. Like, I love that stuff. I absolutely love it. I think that's the kind of arrogance and the confidence and ego you need in the NBA. And my biggest worry coming from this suspension is that maybe he dials it down. Deservedly so, he got suspended. Deservedly so, he was upset. And we don't have to dive into all of that and what happened. But I don't want this to change kind of his mentality and how he's been playing, because I feel like at the end of the day, Omar, I feel like he did used to let himself get punked a little bit. Like, he would let guys talk trash and get in his head, and he didn't necessarily respond. So again, I'm not condoning what he did to Mo Wagner, but I'm just saying that I like that he's standing up for himself and he's playing with confidence and arrogance. And, I belong here. I'm a part of this. You can't just hip check me into the crowd because I'm Killian Hayes. Like, I'm somebody in this league. So I just don't want that to change, whatever it is. If he misses some shots, if he goes back to the bench, if whatever it is, I don't want that headspace to change for Killian Hayes.
Keep playing with that fire. Keep playing with that pride. If you do that, everything else should fall into place. But he just can't go back to the headspace he was in over the first 3 weeks of the season. If he does that, then it's not going to work out for him.
Yeah, I put let his personality shine. Like, he has this personality that I feel like we've got to see. He's let us see, and just let that continue to grow and shine. So we're going to do one more. Saddiq Bey, I guess he has been playing as the 2 in the starting lineup since Killian went out over the last 3 games. So we'll keep him here before we move to some of the more forwards and bigs after the break. Saddiq Bey, Omari, it's been up and down, I feel like, going through his whole career, going through this season, even within a game. Like, I'll be honest, I don't even know what to think about Saddiq right now. Like, I used to be probably more down on him than the fan base because everybody thought he was a number 2 option, and I wasn't sure I saw that. Now I feel like a lot of the fan base doesn't even think he's a part of this core anymore, and he'll be gone in the offseason. Like, this may be the player I have the least grip on in terms of his future with this team. So what would your New Year's resolution be for Saddiq Bey?
My New Year's resolution for Saddiq Bey is to get back to his bread and butter. Just come in, embrace the role you had at Villanova and your rookie season, and just shoot the ball.
Okay.
I think he's gotten into his head, and I think last season when the coaching staff gave him the freedom to expand his game, he showed mixed results with that, right? I think he got better in it as the season went on, but we saw it last season and we've seen it this season that it's almost like he's thinking too much when he plays. Well, it's not almost like he is thinking too much when he plays. I think we have seen that that's pretty clear for him. And if you're passing up or just second guessing wide open threes and you're not attacking the game as this is my best weapon and this is the best skill I bring to the team and they need that. And I need to go in with the mindset that I need to be one of the best shooters in the NBA. For him, it all starts with that. We've seen him sort of work inside a lot more, which, again, has had mixed results. He's having his best season as far as 2-point percentage, but that's also regressed a little bit compared to a pretty strong start inside the arc to begin the season. At the end of the day, he has to be able to fall back on that 3-point shot, and he's having his worst season as a shooter. And that has to be his bread and butter, period. The touch inside may come and go. That's been a growth area for him. But if he's not shooting the ball well, the rest of his game is going to suffer. And I think we've seen that this season. So I think he really just needs, whether it's over All-Star weekend or just over the summer or what, just get back to basics, simplify it, just see some shots fall for a good month or 2. And then from there, maybe the other parts of your game begin to fall into place naturally. Like as for Isaiah Stewart, we see him developing his dribble drive game on the fly. Now that he's knocking down threes, we know Saddiq can shoot, but he hasn't been shooting it that well, so he has to get back to that.
Yeah, I was having this conversation the other day around the contract stuff that we've talked a little bit about, Omari. I don't know how much you can pay a guy who is a career under 40% shooter from the field. Sadiq is 39.9% from the field for his career. That happens to be what he's shooting this year. But the most concerning thing to me is the numbers are almost down across the board. The field goal percentage is pretty much level. 3-point percentage is down. His free throw attempts are up, which speaks to him going to the rim more. Rebounds are down, assists are down, steals and blocks are relatively the same. So the 3-point shooting has gotten worse. The 2-point percentage has gotten a little better, but then nothing else has improved. His minutes aren't even down that much. They're down 4 minutes a game. So it's not like that's skewing the data a lot. He's got to find his role. And maybe it's what you said. It's off the bench. It's come in and it's bang threes. If that's what it is, then he needs to do it. I'm about to drop a piece where I went back and watched every single 3-point attempt of his this year, Omari, and I tracked, like, did he step with his left right or his right left? Was it a catch and shoot? Was it off the dribble? All of that stuff, just to see if I could find some consistencies or inconsistencies in his shooting. And he's been shooting it better of late for sure, but he's just had never really truly found that consistency throughout his career. Even if you go look at his game logs, Omari, even in like his rookie season, it was like 20, 16, and then a 4-point game. And then it was 10, and then it was 24 and 51, and then back to 10. You know, like it's always up and down. And I would love to see him find his role and then find a consistency in what he's bringing to the table every night.
His shot diet, I think a lot of that just starts with shot diet
I agree.
in general. Because when you look at per 100, he's taking the most shots he's taken inside the arc ever. He's only slightly ahead of last season. He took 9.5 2-pointers last season. He's at 9.7 right now. He took 5.9 as a rookie, so that's going up a lot. The problem for him is that he's taken fewer 3-pointers every season, and his percentage is going down every season. As a rookie,
that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, which is not what you want to see. He took 11.8 3-pointers a game per 100 his rookie season, 38% clip, which is fantastic. Last season, 11, slight decline, 34.6%, pretty average. This season, 9 3-pointers, 32.3%, which is bad, obviously. So, again, that's got to be his bread and butter. And if you're regressing as a shooter, then that's not going to help the rest of your game. So it would help him and it would help the Pistons if he just said, you know what, forget everything else. I'm just going to shoot the ball and be good at that. And that'll be my value to the team. And I think that would help everybody.
You know, you can understand the percentage going down if the volume was going up, but man, it's hard to stomach it when the volume's going down along with the percentage. Like that's not a great trajectory to be on, even though shooting, especially from 3, can be a little bit of a roller coaster throughout a player's career. And before we go to break, I just do want to mention, he also has to figure out who he's going to guard defensively. Like there's a whole lot of role stuff with Sadiq Bey in terms of, are you a starter? Are you a bench player? Are you a 3-point shooter? Are you a driver? Are you trying to do both? And then are you a 3-man or a 4-man? Who are you going to guard? And so there's a lot of questions. It may be the player for me that there's the most questions around with his role and his game with this team moving forward. But we're going to take a short break right now. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about maybe the 2 most exciting players. And that's the front court of Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, and also some of the other forwards and bigs on this team.
I'm Alyssa Robinson for the Detroit Free Press. When you wake up every morning, what's the first thing you do? Check your email? Me too. And when you sign up for our daily briefing newsletter, you'll get all the latest news sent directly to your inbox so you can wake up and be ready for the day. We also have newsletters about COVID-19 in Michigan, the latest entertainment headlines, as well as Woodward 248, a newsletter specifically for people living and working in Southeast Oakland County. And don't forget about automotive headlines and all the latest news from our Michigan sports teams. We have a newsletter for every personality and preference. Just head to freep.com/newsletters to sign up for any one of these great options and more.
All right, we are back with segment 2 of our Pistons New Year's resolutions, and we're going to lead off with Isaiah Stewart, who I think has really proven himself as a shooter this season, and just overall as an offensive player. We're really seeing him make a lot of leaps at once, and overall, I would say that he's probably ahead of schedule compared to what we could have expected from him this time last year. My resolution for Isaiah Stewart is to continue to grow as a playmaker. I think right now we see that his shooting is good. He's around 36%. If he maintains that the rest of the year, fantastic. If he's a 36% shooter the rest of his career, I think the Pistons will be very happy with that. And who's to say he won't even get better, right? So let's say the shooting's proven. I like that he is trying to develop that high-low game with Jalen Duren. And I like that he has embraced that he's a 4 and he's going to have to do 4 things. Like, he's looking for those passes. He's bringing the ball up here and there. He's doing a lot of stuff to just develop his game as a passer and as a ball handler. And from here, he can make those things featured parts of his development, because those aren't things that he's worked on as much as the shooting. If he came into next season and he could reliably get during the ball when the defense comes up too far and you can get him easy dunk or lob or whatever it is, and when he's at the top of the key and a defender closes out, he's not shuffling his feet and traveling like he has a tendency to do now. He's just making decisive decisions with the ball, keeping his head up, and then maybe you're finding Duran down low, or maybe a shooter in the corner. We're seeing him trying to do those things now, and the results have been mixed. But the resolution for him is just simply to continue to experiment with those things this season, make those featured parts of your game, get comfortable, and then continue to build that momentum going into your 4th year.
So just to really quick finish off the Saddiq Bey stuff, Isaiah Stewart only shoots 1 less 3 per game than Saddiq Bey does this season, and they play essentially the exact same minutes. So I think that speaks to Saddiq Bey and what we talked about with the 3-point shooting. I think it also speaks to what you were talking about with Isaiah Stewart and how this 3-point shooting has really come around for this kid. Like, this is impressive. This is beyond what I expected. Him shooting, 4 a game, and then also at 36% a game. So like that's really good sign. I think the word that comes to mind with Isaiah Stewart, and we talked about this with Jaden Ivey, I think Isaiah Stewart actually has a really good process right now, Omari. Now, the results aren't always there, right? In the game on Monday night against the Blazers, remember the lob he tried to throw to Jalen Duren? You tweeted it out, and I responded to you. And we both agree, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, it was the right play. Like, he absolutely should have thrown a lob pass to Jalen Duren. It just was an awful pass. Like, he just missed it short. And he missed it short because a couple weeks ago, he made the right pass to throw a lob to Duren, and he air melded into the stand. So to me, his process is good, Omari. He's shooting when he should shoot. He's attacking closeouts when he should attack closeouts. We've even seen him some jelly with some finger rolls and some same foot, same hand finishes, and then driving kicks. He just has to continue to get better at those things. But to me, the fact the process is as good as it is for Stu, that's really, really exciting.
If you didn't see the process, then we would be having a different discussion, right? We'll be saying we don't know if Isaiah Stewart can do these things, and maybe he's just a 3 and D4, which again, is a player you can build around. Serves an important role, especially when he can defend multiple positions, but caps his ceiling as an overall power forward. But we are seeing that he is making the reads he should be making, and he's processing the game the way he should be processing it. He's seeing the plays he needs to make. And for him, that leads me to believe that it's just reps. It's just him doing it more, him doing specific drills in practice, making it a focal point of his offseason regime, and just getting those reps down. I think mentally he's right where he needs to be, if not ahead of schedule, considering that this is a role he's never really played before. He's an extremely smart player. He knows what's needed from him. He's embraced that head on. And he also understands just how much of a weapon Jalen Duren is, which I think is fun, that Isaiah Stewart was drafted to be the center. And then they were like, actually, you're a power forward, and we're going to bring in a center who's bigger and more athletic. Isaiah Stewart's just like, yeah, cool. All right, that works. I'll just start shooting threes and, bring the ball up the floor and, developing the high-low game. And he's like, I've never done these things before, but I'm just going to do it. And he's been doing it. So for him, just reps, sticking with the process, I think that by this time next season, he will be dramatically improved in both of those areas.
Before we move to Jalen Duren, you brought up something that was also on my list, and that's just for him to continue to grow as a vocal and emotional leader. We've talked about it a little bit, like how we kind of feel like he's the soul of this team, especially with Cade out. He's probably the heart and soul and everything else, because he's probably the one other guy that's here long term that, can really be a leader. So I want to see him continue to hold teammates accountable and be vocal out there and just be an emotional leader. Let's talk about the rookie Jalen Duren, his front court mate. Like, I'm super excited about these two. Me and Wes were talking about this the other day. We were texting, I think both of us are on the same page that this is probably the most exciting part of this Pistons team right now, especially with the Cade injury and some different things. I really like this front court. I knew I was going to like it defensively, Omari. Offensively, it's been even better than I could imagine. But specifically to Jalen Duren, what is your New Year's resolution?
I want to see him develop a post hook.
Okay.
I think he's exceeded expectations already. because we were, not just us, I think everybody, we kind of talked about what is his realistic best outcome next season. And with a player who's 18 years old going into the rookie season, you always sort of push expectations back, right? Like maybe by All-Star Weekend he's doing this, or maybe by March he's doing that. And he's been doing all these things since opening night. So he's already ahead of schedule. I want to see him become just a little bit more of an offensive weapon. I think just the natural growth he'll have as a rebounder, lob finisher. He's already pretty great at those things. And defensively, I don't necessarily want to make a New Year's resolution for him to get better, because I think he has the instincts to get better. I think a player that young is going to have deficiencies for obvious reasons, but I'm just banking on him developing in that area naturally. I want to see him get a little bit of a post hook down. Sometimes he gets caught on an island, and teams know that his feel when he's not just catching a lob or dunking the ball is not quite there. So I want to see him get a little bit more comfortable. We've seen him sort of dabble with a hook or a mid-range shot here and there, but just getting that touchdown, I think, would really open up some more things for him. And you look at players like, I'm not saying he's going to shoot threes like Brook Lopez, but one thing that makes Brook great is that, yes, he's a good defender. Yes, he can hit threes, but you could also just give him the ball and he can make things happen. That's always been a part of his game, and there's still a role for that. So maybe not the most important part of Jalen Duren's development, but I think it would just help him in the offense a little bit more if he did have that touchdown low and he could make plays happen on his own.
Well, I think bringing that up just speaks to the upside that we see in this kid, the ceiling that we think he can have. And I am going to bring up the defense, Omari. You know that I can't help myself talk about defense, but I did have the offensive growth with non-dunk finishing is what I put. So like we're on the same page there. Like, yeah, he's going to catch a lob. His offensive rebounding legit is elite in the NBA.
Fantastic.
It's unbelievable, man. Like, and he's gotten really good at the little tip outs, and I don't even know if he always gets credit with offensive rebounds for those. The NBA stat keeping is interesting and kind of wonky sometimes, but he creates a lot of extra possessions. Like, I think we can say he does it at an elite level at 19 years old. So that's incredible. His passing flashes have already shown. I think we know he's going to be able to short roll pass and do some of those things. So I think you're right. Like, whether it's like a mid-range 15-foot jumper, whether it's a true sort of post-up game where he can just jump as high as possible and shoot a little jump hook, I do think that would be a huge part of his offensive game. I would like to see the defense get better, specifically in ball screen coverages, Omari. I will give it this caveat. Like, I don't know that he's going to get better individually until this team gets better as a team, though, and that's probably not going to happen this year. So, like, to your point, I don't know that we're going to see a whole lot of improvement from this team or anybody as an individual throughout the season. Obviously, that's going to be something they're going to have to address in the offseason. But I did a full breakdown on his ball screen coverage, and he does have some bad habits and some things that he could definitely get better at. But I love the ceiling, and I love that you went there with the kind of touch around the basket or jump hook finishing.
I mean, again, he has exceeded expectations, and anything significant he adds to his game at this point in his career is gravy, because you can project some things naturally that he's going to get better at. But for him, if he can just knock down shots or the post hook or whatever, I think that would give him even more utility on offense. And I think he could do it. We'd see him work on his jump shot with Isaiah Stewart and Marvin Bagley after almost every practice. It's been a focal point of his development already. And they're not going to have him do it this season. I don't think. I'd be shocked if we see him start checking threes by the end of the season like they did Isaiah Stewart in his rookie season. But long term, I think that's something that he'll eventually begin to show.
Let's move to the other big on the roster, one that's kind of been injury prone here lately, and that's Marvin Bagley III. So first, Omari, do you have any updates from the injury on Monday night? I don't think you've got to go to shoot around or practice today, so you probably don't have anything for us. I didn't know if you had anything post-game yesterday. And then on top of that, what is your New Year's resolution for Marvin Bagley?
No update on the hand. I actually missed when it happened during the game. I think he just knocked in on something, so I'm not sure exactly how serious it is. And we're recording this Tuesday morning, so I'm actually going to be at practice today in a couple of hours. So maybe by the time people listen to this pod, an update will be out there from yours truly. But as of right now, no. My resolution for Bagley is just, we've seen games where he can be a pest on defense, which I think for him is probably his best role, where he has active hands. He can, deflect shots, and maybe he's not the guy you want switching and being in an Isaiah Stewart role. But if he can just give some utility on defense and be a net neutral, You combine that with his touch inside and his ability to put up points in a hurry here and there, and you have a pretty solid two-way big, right? Like, he's not going to be Rudy Gobert. He's not going to be Isaiah Stewart, right? But you want to see him do a little bit more, whether it's just creating turnovers or holding his own in the paint when guards challenge him or they try to run a post-up for a big. Because we see him have a pretty good defensive game maybe once every 6 or 7 games. And ideally, you would want to see that become at least 1 in every 2. So he has the tools to do it. For him, it's just doing it. So that's what I want to see from him.
Yeah, I think there's been some signs of defensive improvement. Like, at least he's been disruptive. We've seen him block a couple shots and get some deflections. I just put, like, find whatever it was that led to the success last season. I just don't feel like he's found that same role and that same success that we saw him when he averaged 15 points a game through the last 18 games of last season. And so, like, I would just love for him to find that again at some point throughout this year. And unfortunately, it seems like all of a sudden he's been getting banged up. And so he hasn't been able to find consistent minutes. He was hurt, then he was off the bench, and then he started for a few games, then he was off the bench, and then he was hurt again. He came back, like, he's just kind of bounced around. So I'd love for him to find some consistency. Let's keep moving here. Like, this one will be interesting. Bojan Bogdanovic having a career year with the Pistons, especially in terms of scoring. I do want to mention, like, I feel like he's been passing the ball really well the last 3 or 4 games, more so than what we had seen earlier this season, which has been impressive from Bojan. Hopefully he is demonstrating that for other teams. That's my opinion anyway. But what's your New Year's resolution for Bojan?
Bojan is a bit tough, right? Because he's been so good offensively, even by his usual standard. And maybe there are times where you see him do too much on the floor, but I think some of that is a byproduct of just the lack of playmaking on the roster, which, of course, Cade being hurt sort of lowered the ceiling for this team without in, and everybody's having to do a little bit more than you would like. But as a whole, Bogey's been really good. And it's also tough because he's in his mid-30s, so it's like...
What are you going to improve on?
What are you going to improve on? I would say for Bogey, because he is presumably in the back half of his career, still playing at a high level, but 5 years from now, will he still be playing at this level? Probably not. 33 years old, turns 34 this year. In his next season, going into next season, just if he is 85% as good offensively as he is now, that would still be fantastic for the Pistons. So my resolution for him is just keep it up. Keep starving off Father Time. Starve off Father Time. I don't know if that's a resolution. Like, I don't know. That's not even up to him, right? Like, that is like his body and his physiology. Like, there's no way he could purposefully do that. So I don't know if that's a good resolution. That's mine for him. Just keep the consistency through next season. Don't let your body break down. Don't let the things happen when you're, around that age start to happen. Just keep playing at a high level, be this player. And if the Pistons can get anything close to this Bogey next season with, the cap space that was summer, another draft pick, Cade's back, this and that, you're probably in pretty good shape, at least as an offensive team. So that's my resolution for him. That is more of a maybe wishful thinking, I guess, but that's my resolution.
Find the fountain of youth. I would
find the fountain of youth, yes.
I would like Bogey to find the fountain of youth while he finds a new home with a different team. I have nothing against Bogey because I'm with you. I think the reason we see so much usage from him is because he's forced to have that type of usage with this team. I am kind of my offseason plan right now, and this is always subject to change, but my offseason plan right now would to be move on from Bogey, depending on what the return, right? There's always context. Like, I wouldn't trade Bogey for a second-round pick if that's the market. But if you could get a first-round pick, mid-first round pick, I like a lot of wings in this draft in the mid-first round. And so I would move on from Bogey. That's just my opinion. I know a lot of people will disagree. I know a lot of people are tired of flipping these guys. I'm sure after Jeremy Grant went bananas on Monday, I know I had some of those discussions on Twitter about Jeremy Grant and the trade and all of that. I know people are tired of it. That's just what I would personally do. Let's get a couple more in here before we go to break. Isaiah Livers, not a guy we've got to see play a whole lot this season, Omari. Hopefully we're going to get to see him soon. I know he was practicing and then he had a little setback. What's the New Year's resolution for Isaiah Livers?
Yeah, Livers is in a unique spot just because I feel like we were both pretty high on him coming into the season. He's had some injury issues and he hasn't also quite shot the ball as well as you would hope. For him, it's just getting back to being the shooter that we know he is. He's had an interrupted first half of the season, and long term, I don't really have any questions about his jumper, but that's going to be his primary utility for this team. And they need him to come in and be an elite shooter. And if he is that, then especially if you look at the team now, I think Hami's played really well. And Kevin Knox, he's been a little bit more up and down, but I shot the ball pretty well all season. And both of those guys have been sharing minutes at the 4. But I still think Isaiah Livers could kind of lock that position down himself just because of what he brings you defensively. He's got a little bit more size than Hami. And I think he can shoot just as well as Kevin Knox has this season. So for him, it's just coming in, shooting the ball, stay healthy, obviously, but his resolution for me is just shoot the ball as well as you did in college and as well as you did last season. And if he does that, I still think he could be a really key role player for this team.
I'm in the same boat. I said health, get him on the floor, get him healthy, and then get those minutes and opportunities to show himself, improve himself, because he is a guy I'm still high on because of all the things you talked about. Let's do Kevin Knox. What is your New Year's resolution for Kevin Knox, who, had a really good stretch of games, and then Hami got an opportunity. To Hami's credit, he's taken advantage of the opportunity, and now Kevin Knox seemed to, taking a little bit of a backseat. So what's your New Year's resolution for Kevin Knox?
New Year's resolution for Kevin Knox is pretty similar. Just continue shooting the ball at a high level. This year has really been, it hasn't been a breakout season, but I think it's been the season he's always been capable of having, where he's shooting the ball pretty well. He's pretty efficient overall. He gives you some size on defense. Maybe the execution isn't always there, but he has a big body with the size to defend a lot of different positions. And just keep shooting the ball well. Just keep the momentum going you have now. I think it's really helped him. It's really helped him to have a season where he's had a consistent role from game to game, which that's largely because of injuries. But if he continues shooting the ball, I think he'll continue to have a role.
I'm the same way. Consistent jump shot, that's the thing he does the best. His defense has been better than expected, but his role, his ability to play on an NBA court really comes down to knocking down open catch and shoot threes. We're going to go to a short break here, and then when we come back, we'll finish out the roster with some quick hitters on Alec Burks, Corey Joseph, some other veterans, and then get to head coach Dwayne Casey, the front office, this organization as a whole, and maybe even get Omari and I's individual New Year's resolutions.
All right, hey, Carlos, just a quick idea. How about if I say, hey, this is Sean Windsor, and you say, hey, this is Carlos Morales, and I'll go, and then we'll go back. You want to try that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Hey, this is Sean Windsor.
And this is Carlos Benares.
And we are the team behind Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean, where we are going to talk about, you guessed it, sports, but lots of other stuff. Like what, Carlos?
Oh, we're going to talk about your favorite subject, Sean, food. Probably more food. Arts, culture, sports, TV, movies, you name it. If it's happened in Detroit, we're going to talk about it.
And sometimes we're going to have guests in who obviously know a lot more than we do about just about everything. But we're going to have some free press journalists to talk about big stories, folks from the sports world. We're going to be out every Thursday. You can find this podcast wherever you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We hope you'll join us.
All right, we are back with segment 3, and we've gotten through most of the core roster. So of the rest of the roster, we're just going to pick one guy from each. And Bryce, I'm going to let you lead this one off. Of the remaining players, sort of what's the player you're focusing the most on, and what do you want to see from them in 2023?
I actually went off script here a little, Omari, so you can still just do one. I did all 5, but I'll go really quick. So Alec Burks, I want him to have a home in Detroit. I want Alec Burks to stay on this team. I love the role. I think he can stay in the role for the next year or two. I love the contract he's on. So Alec Burks, home in Detroit. Corey Joseph, I would like for him to get a role on the Detroit Pistons coaching staff and off the active roster. I know we've been fans of Corey Joseph, Omari, but I do think his game has slipped, and I think we've seen that. Rodney Magruder deserves a lifetime contract. He's a pro's pro, and, as Mr. Blaha says, Nerlens Noel, he needs a new home. And then Hamidou Diallo, again, has had some really good stretch of play. My pitch for Hamidou Diallo, he should play 2 4-minute stretch every single game. Just come in, influx of energy, enthusiasm, cause some havoc, and then get him out of the game before he makes a mistake. So those are my New Year's resolutions for those 5 players.
I am going to do Alec Burks, and I'm going to say it's pretty similar to you. Just keep being Alec Burks. I think he's been absolutely fantastic for this team this season. I still don't know how he draws those shitty fouls. It doesn't really, like, I've seen him do it 100 times. It still doesn't really make sense how he does it. Like, I don't know how he does it. He just sort of flings himself into guys, and it works every single time. Like, I haven't seen too many players with that ability, and he's able to do it every single night. But you look at just the bench offensive weapons the Pistons have had, and I mean, I'm watching, I'm born and raised in Detroit, watching the same since I was a little kid. They haven't had many spark plugs like Alec Burks. Like, this is a guy that could have helped every single good Pistons team in the history of the entire franchise. Like, you could put him on any team, and I think he would have had a role, and a pretty important role at that. And if the Pistons can make a leap forward next year, you pick up his team option for $10 million this summer. And kind of like Bogey, if he's still mostly the player he is right now, that's a really important weapon for you to have. And he's just a lot of fun to watch. So Alec Burks, just keep being Alec Burks. I think if he does that, he'll be in a really good spot here.
Real quick, I know people say, well, why do you want to trade Bogey and not Burks? I just think Burks' role fits perfectly what this team needs. And I would feel like you have to ask Bogey to take a different role in a backseat next year, which if he's willing to do it, then I would change my thoughts about trading him. But I just think Alec Burks is this, score off the bench at the 2 is perfect for what this team needs, and he seems happy in doing so. So let's move to some non-players now. Omari, we'll start with head coach Dwayne Casey. I'm sure this would be very interesting if we ask for the fan base's New Year's resolution for Dwayne Casey on Twitter or in the comments. So do feel free to share what your New Year's resolution would be for any of these players, for Coach Casey, Troy Weaver. Let us know on Twitter, in the comments, on any of the websites, wherever you listen. Leave it in a review. But Omari, what would be your New Year's resolution for head coach Dwayne Casey?
See, this one is tough because I know a lot of people criticize Dwayne Casey's rotations, but I see who he puts out there, and I think he's always been a rock in a hard place because either you're going with your young first unit, which is very mistake prone, or you're going with your second unit, which has been one of the highest scoring units in the NBA. I know people hate seeing the bench out there, but their bench has been consistently better than the starting 5. So when he rides the bench out, I don't really have a problem with that. Like, we even saw last week, like, the bench can close games out. Like, I don't think it's inherently a problem when he rides the bench longer than people think because, again, the young guys in this team tend to be pretty mistake prone, and you have to find a line between developing and winning, which is probably going to vary from game to game or even from week to week, right? It just sort of depends on the needs of the team, individual players, game flow. A New Year's resolution for Dwayne Casey. I feel like that is tough because he doesn't have, like, the roster he probably needs to, like, really do what he wants to do.
I can go. You want me to go?
I'm gonna let you go and then come back to me.
No, I'll go. I put thick skin because it's going to, like, the fan base, it's always been a thing, Omari. We've been here the same amount of time. We both started 2020, and it's always been a thing, I feel like. Even, maybe not right from the start, but pretty quickly I started to hear the Dwayne Casey critiques. And it's gotten the most it's ever been. Every loss is his fault. Every bad performance is his fault. And I'm not saying he's immune to responsibility for some of these performances, but we even heard the players come out in his defense a week ago saying, this wasn't on Dwayne Casey. This is on us. So thick skin, and he's been around long enough. Like, I'm sure it doesn't bother him. He's heard everything. But I also would just pitch some patience from the fan base. Like, this team wasn't that great to begin. It all comes down to expectations. The expectations, in my opinion, were too high coming into the season for most of the fan base. Once we saw what this team really was, we needed to adjust those. And then when Cade got hurt, Omari, we really needed to adjust our expectations. Last night, who were the 3 best players on the floor in the game against against the Blazers? Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, and Jeremy Grant. The Blazers had the 3 best players on the floor, Omari.
Yeah, all these guys have been elite scorers this season, too.
Yeah, so, like, how is he supposed to win that game? Now, if you want to fault the effort and the defense and some of that stuff, okay. But again, some of that comes back to the players as well. So I would say some thick skin, hopefully some patience from the fan base. And then here's my one critique, Omari. I'll critique Dwayne Casey. I don't like the end of the game strategy. When it's a close game, I don't like the isolation possessions because they don't have Cade Cunningham. I think he should take a different strategy for closing out games like the Clippers game and that collapse and all of that, where it essentially went isolation. I would like a different strategy in those situations. There's a critique.
And I'll say this. I want to see more opportunities for Killian Hayes late in games to create plays because we've seen him hit clutch shots this season. He's still the best passer on the roster. And sometimes his leash for the guards could be a lot shorter than for some of the veteran players, which, like, Killian Hayes makes mistakes too. Like, I'm not saying that he's earned the entire benefit of the doubt yet, but he is still a future franchise player. Maybe he's having a game where he's struggling, this and that. I do want to see what he could do late in games a little bit more than we've seen so far. We've seen him close games out. Let's see if he can continue to rise to the moment and minimize those mistakes. I think he holds Killian Hayes and Jaden Ivey to the same standard, but I think Killian is ahead of Ivey right now, and he's probably earned a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. So that would be my resolution. I want to see more late game Killian.
And so then, like, that brought up another thing. I'd like to see some offense, defense subs. Like, I'm nitpicking here, but yeah, like, of course, there's some places to improve. Let's move on to the front office. So, I mean, it can be Troy Weaver specifically, but just the front office in general from the Detroit Pistons. What would be a New Year's resolution for GM Troy Weaver?
My resolution for Troy Weaver is I want to see another aggressive offseason. I think you have the cap space. You're going to have another likely top 6 pick. And your young core is going to be entering year 4, right? And I think it's probably likely we'll see at least a couple of these guys get extensions, and you're going to start to move into the next phase of the restoring. So I think the timing now to just sort of take that leap forward makes sense. Like, I'm not saying you have to make win now moves to turn this team into a contender, but it's kind of like last offseason when he said that the team's at ground zero now. Next season, in a sense, will be ground zero again because Cade's coming back and this and that. But just from a depth standpoint, from a talent standpoint, his team should probably trend a lot closer to making the playoffs or at least a play-in. And they'll need help from Eastern Conference because, again, the conference is very deep right now. At some point, you have to say, I think we have enough to win. And I know the organization has always kind of seen 2023 as an ideal point to make that leap forward. From everything I've heard talking to people, I don't think Cade's injury really impacts that. So, just go out, get some good players, trust the young guys, and put a team on the floor next season that you feel pretty good could compete for the playoffs. I think by year 4, it's probably reasonable to think this team could make a leap forward. And as long as you have health, it's probably time to turn the page and say, all right, now we're going to start competing.
Okay, so I don't disagree with anything you said, but I actually put patience. And I think my patience is in terms of, like, I don't want to see them go make some splash, crazy big move. I think that would be speeding up the process a little bit too much. And my points would be, look like the Chicago Bulls, look at the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like, those major moves didn't pan out well. Now, the counters would be like the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? The Cavs went out, they got Donovan Mitchell, and it looks like that was the right move. The Phoenix Suns, when they went and got CP3, even though it hasn't turned into a championship. So I think you can acquire a lot of talent this offseason and young talent again without just going crazy. Like, I don't want to see him overspend on not on a long-term free agent, right? Babcock brought this up. Keith Smith has brought this up when we've talked to him as well. A 1-year contract can't be a bad contract. So if they want to go pay someone 1 year, $20 million, $25 million to fill a role, I'm cool with that. I'm just saying I think they're still 1 year away from the big trade or the big free agent move. So I want to see patience in that way, I guess.
And I want to clarify, I'm not saying they should go out and trade for Bradley Beal
exactly.
or Zach LaVine or anything like that. Like, I think that would be a bit hasty. You wanted to rebuild this the right way. You wanted to do it through the draft and this and that. And I'm all for that. I'm thinking more along the lines of, like, another move for a guy like a Bogey, right? Like, or if you look at the model the Atlanta Hawks followed in 2020, before they made that Eastern Conference Finals run in 2021, where you have young talent and then you just go out and you get really good veterans, right? You're not necessarily mortgaging your future for these players, but you're getting good veterans on good contracts, and you're just trusting that your young players could step up and that they're ready to win. So don't package, however many picks and young players for, a superstar and repeat Blake Griffin or, any other miscues they've had in the past. Don't be hasty, but, continue the aggression you've shown so far. I just want to continue to see that. I think if this were an offseason where they say maybe it's time to dial back a little bit, maybe we're not there yet. That may be the right decision in the end, but I think the longer you rebuild, the longer that things have a chance to sort of go askew, right? And, and this is year 3. At a certain point, you just kind of have to give the team a chance to compete and see what happens. So, I'm not saying trade for Bradley Beal or anything like that, but just the path they're on now, where they've positioned themselves to make a leap next season, stick to that.
Yeah, they got to take a step forward, right? Like there needs to be a legitimate, tangible step forward next season. I also just want to point out real quick, we don't need to get into it. We'll have plenty of time in the offseason, but it also depends on who you draft. Because if you draft Victor Wembanyama, I think you have your starting 5. If you draft Scoot Henderson, you have your starting 5. You get after those guys, like it depends on how you feel about the Thompson twins. Like if you fall to 5 or 6, now you might not be drafting a starter. So there's a spot at the 3 to start someone that, isn't currently on the roster, or Bogey to still start there. So, you get the number 1 pick, and that changes all the game plans because you just got, hopefully, your franchise changer along with Cade. So I just want to point that out as well. Like that, where you land in the draft is going to dictate a lot of this offseason as well. Let's just have a couple personal ones here, mate. We don't have to get into our individual, but I do want to do one. The Pistons pulse as a whole, Omari. We haven't even done this 12 months. We are coming up on a year, which is crazy, but not even a year into this thing. What is your New Year's resolution 2023 for this podcast and what we got going?
Continue our momentum. Honestly, I think our first 10 months have been really encouraging. And I mean, you just see the feedback we've gotten and the audience that we've grown. And it's been pretty gratifying, honestly. It probably didn't even cross my mind to really do a podcast until a couple of years ago. And now we're doing it, and it's been a lot of fun. And it's been great to just have the interaction on Twitter and see how many people look forward to hearing our voices every Tuesday, or this week Wednesday, but we'll be back to Tuesday next week, and that's been great. So I just want to continue to see that momentum. More great guests. While keeping in mind that I also think we've realized that for a lot of people, they tune in to hear us. Right? It's great to have guests, but continue to develop our chemistry and provide the analysis on the team that people want. So I mean, really encouraging. 10 months, like you said, not even a year in yet, which is crazy because it feels like it's been longer than a year, honestly. I like what we've done so far, and I just want to continue to see us push ourselves and take it to the next level.
Yeah, and I want to point out, like, Omari, Wes, like, are 2 of my better friends in the world. Like I've become close with both of those guys. So, like, that's one of the coolest things. Like, if whatever happens with the podcast, wherever it goes, like, it's pretty cool to have developed friendships with these guys and, talk about life things. Wes is always telling me about renovating his house and all that. I'm like, man, you're way more of a handyman than me. And, Omari and I have had some real life conversations when we've been able to have a supper, together and stuff like that. So that's been really cool. So I had 3, Omari. 1, I want to get us on YouTube. That's one big thing. I want to get our fan base some merchandise. And then finally, I'm coming in April, and we've talked about this. And so I want to start putting it into the universe because I think it might happen. I really want to meet our fans in person, do a live recording. Me and you somewhere in Detroit, Wes there with us, make it a big deal, have the fan base come out and listen to a live recording. So if you're listening to this, if you follow us and listen all the way till the end of the podcast, let us know. Reach out, send an email, Twitter DM, whatever. Let us know if you would be interested in coming out to a live recording in April whenever I'm in it. I think it's going to be warm enough in April, right? If we did something outside, or I guess maybe we could be inside if it wasn't warm yet.
Yeah, a lot of that comes down to what the groundhog sees a shadow. I think April could skew either way. So hopefully it'll be warm and some sun. More than likely, it'll probably be 44 degrees and rainy, but knock on wood, we'll see. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of big plans, obviously, that we've talked about really since the podcast launched. And ideally, we'll see 2023 be a year where a lot of it comes into fruition. So, we know a lot of you want to see merch, and just give us feedback on what you want to see. We have discussions about this stuff behind the scenes a lot. We're always planning, we're always scheming. So, tell us what you want, and it gives us an idea of what we need to be doing.
Final thing, Omar, do you have one for yourself? I put one down. I'm going to try some new foods this year. Like, you guys have talked, You guys have talked to me. You've given me hate. Like, I probably get more hate on Twitter about my food takes than anything else that I talk about. So I will try to expand my horizon when it comes to my food diet in 2023.
I like that. I'm glad you brought that up. And we can't stay on this tangent too long, but I'm in Portland right now. And with the Voodoo Donuts, one of the most famous donut spots in the world. And I got a maple bacon donut, and it was fantastic. So when you come here in April, I'm going to have to procure a maple bacon donut for you, and that'll be a big chapter in your food journey, Bryce. The one for me, this year, I used to be a lot more sentimental about New Year's and stuff. And this year I was just like, I feel like I'm doing all right. I don't necessarily need any any big sweeping changes. The main thing for me every year, like when it's warm outside, like I'm active, like I like to swim, I like to bike, do stuff. When it gets cold out, my energy gets cut in half, and you couple that with, working 3-4 nights a week, travel, all that stuff. It's really hard to establish a good just fitness schedule. So I'm going to make a point to use the hotel gyms, and when I'm home, get back to the YMCA. And if it's not cardio, like maybe it could just be like a bulk phase, right? Like I'm just going to eat and, just lift some weights, but then I can get back into the pool over the summer. But I can't let myself go during the season, man. Like I gotta stick to the routine. So that's mine.
So just a little insight in some of my life. I'm the same. I'll run outside in the summer, but obviously it's cold in Kansas. It does get cold. I know, believe it or not. It was like -30 wind chill the other day. I go to our garage and I literally jog in place. So I turn a podcast on and I just jog in place in the garage. So like, I'm sure I look stupid as heck doing that. But that's my workout. And then of course I coach basketball, coach football. So I'm always on my feet doing that stuff as well. I do a little bit of weightlifting, but for the most part, that's what it is. But yeah, I love to hear that. It's going to be a big year, I think, for both of us individually, for Wes, for us collectively. Really appreciate you guys. Appreciate everybody at Freep and putting the Pistons Pulse together. Omari, take it away, my guy.
Yes, Happy New Year to our listeners. Big things ahead. Thank you for the support so far, and excited to see where we are this time next year. So big thanks to our audio producers, Kerry Jeter II and Robin Chad, our executive producer, Anjanette Delgado, and our sports editor, Kirkley Crawford. Also, shout out to Wes. We'll talk to you all next Tuesday.